you've got a really avid Alabama following, and they have deputized me to ask you a question.
Okay.
What exactly does it feel like to be blinded by science?
Well, as a known scientist, it would be a bit surprising if the girl blinded me with science.
How long did it take to wear off?
It's never worn off, really. I mean, I kind of like flying blind because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's around the corner. It's I'm at my most creative when I'm floundering and I don't really know what the heck I'm doing.
Right. What were the circumstances when you conceived of this time capsule tour? And is it an outgrowth of the map of the floating city, or is it just concurrent with it?
Yeah, it is an outgrowth because when I ran the floating city game for a few months last year, and when it came to an end, which it was scheduled to do, people were a little bit lost, in their lives. But the problem was that there was no business model for the game. I was just funding it myself. It was free to play, and it was quite expensive to run. So I couldn't have it carry on, and I felt bad because the players had created some amazing content themselves, and I thought it'd be great to sort of capture an archive of what had been done. And then I started thinking that in the Reagan years, he put a silver capsule into space on a probe that had a little bit of everything in there, a bit like a sort of latter-day Noah's Ark. And I liked the time capsule concept. And I started thinking, well, what would my time capsule look like? It would probably look like something designed by Jules Verne. And so that was how the idea for the time capsule came about.
There are several people I know who follow your work who said that their favorite album yet is The Aliens Ate My Buick. And it turns out that all these people are themselves musicians and songwriters. Does it surprise you that this album would appeal especially to other artists?
I've noticed that as well. Aliens Ate My Buick was huge among, it's something that a lot of musicians would get back from tour and say, oh, we played it end to end on our tour bus. Audiophiles use it to test out their speaker systems. PA sound engineers use it to equalize a hall when they get there.
Oh.
And if you go to music trade shows like NAMM, you'll hear it being used to demonstrate some new digital audio workstation or something like that. It's definitely an audiophile album, and it's. I think the musicianship, the musicians that I used on it, were really remarkable, and a lot of it was played live in the studio with a minimal amount of intervention, production intervention. But then it's got some very lush layered production on it as well, stuff like Budapest by Blimp. So no, I wouldn't say it does surprise me. What does surprise me in a way is that when people start a sentence as you did, like, many people say that their favorite album of yours is ... You could pretty much take your pick between any of the 4 solo albums.
Wow.
So the affection that people have is very equally spread between the 4. And I hope that this new album, A Map of the Floating City, will slot in right alongside in their affections.
Your early music treated some of the dystopias of the, I guess, closer to the World War II era. What is the diss in our dystopia now? Has it changed in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think it's we're on a trajectory towards dystopia. On a certain level, our quality of life of our species has improved, with each generation, and we've come to expect creature comforts that our, fathers or grandfathers never would have expected. The flip side is that the way we're headed, it just can't be sustainable. So unless something radical changes, we're not going to be around much long. But if there is hope, it's with the scientists, because it's the radical discoveries, radical inventions out of the blue can be real game changers. Certainly governments and corporations are not going to solve our problems for us because they can only see, to the end of the four-year term or the end of the quarter in the case of corporations, and there's no long-term vision. So it's really artists and scientists that take in the big picture. And so I sort of straddle the two worlds, and that's the one that I inhabit.
It's really cool to read that you record in a floating studio. What is the difference in the satisfaction you feel in isolation recording something as opposed to being on the stage and people dancing?
I mean, I'm naturally an introvert. I'm a hermit with an occasional exhibitionist streak. And a lot of artists are like that, actually. We're not basically party animals. We're quite private people that just have this strange compulsion to get out on stage from time to time, get in the spotlight. Yeah, it feels very different creating like that. It's actually not a floating studio. It's on blocks in my garden.
Okay.
But my garden floods from time to time. Whether it'll float or not remains to be seen. If worse comes to worse, at least it keeps my equipment 6 feet higher than it would have been if I'd built a garden shed. I love working there. It's been a tremendously inspiring place to work, and the whole project of finding the lifeboat and local shipwrights to come in and convert her for me, and adding alternative energy, a turbine up the mast and solar panels on the roof, and the actual construction of the vessel is very much a part of the album process itself.
Does the process of writing music become easier or harder with the passing of time for you?
I'd say about the same. I'm not a prolific writer at all. I'm not somebody that just sort of has a chemical need to knock out a song every couple of weeks. There's very little wastage in my material. I'm often asked whether there is, whether there are outtakes, B-sides, unreleased material that I could put together, and there's really nothing, because if it's good enough, it's good enough to be on the album. If it's not good enough, then I scrap it. So there's really very few byproducts of what I do. It gets easier from a production standpoint to write and record songs as time goes on, because technology makes it more accessible. We no longer need like a venture capitalist in the form of a record label to invest in our careers, in order to have a chance. You can just download a couple of iPhone apps and you're away. The flip side is, of course, there's 20,000 other guys also competing for the same space, that are probably younger and fitter and more excitable than me, and believe 100% that they are the next global megastar.
Right.
And like athletes, when sometimes you wonder how each Olympics they carry on breaking world records, but the species is evolving, and training techniques are evolving, and people will spend 2 years behind closed doors obsessively working on their sequences and their software synths as if they're playing World of Warcraft or something. And all of that is quite intimidating if you're an oldie like me.
Right.
But at the same time, I have something over them, which is that I have a songwriting craft and a storytelling ability that maybe they don't have. So that's what I'm focused on. So it gets easier, it gets harder, but I get more focused in a way, because life is short, and I'd rather draw on my strengths. So my motto really for this album has been only do what only you can do.
I saw an interview with you recently which you said that the fact that so many people have access to so much equipment, that it makes for too few single-minded voices. Is there any exception to that rule that comes to mind of music you've heard lately from new people?
Not offhand, but that's not because it doesn't exist, it's because I don't get out much.
Right.
But I'm off to South by Southwest in a couple of days, so hopefully I'll see something exciting there.
What goes through your mind when you watch your music videos of the 1980s?
For the most part, I'm quite proud of them, really, especially the ones that I wrote and directed myself. Some of them were state of the art at the time, and some of the effects and techniques that we used, haven't held up very well because they've been supplanted many times over by sort of modern techniques and effects and so on. But I like the fact there's a sense of humor. I like the fact that looking back, a lot of my contemporaries were heroes from a more conventional mold. Simon Le Bon on the prow of a luxury yacht, or Adamant as a highwayman, or Billy Idol on a motorcycle. I was the underdog. I was a disciple of Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd, and when I made the video for Sublime Me with Science, it was those guys I was trying to emulate, rather than Errol Flynn.
When you come back home from a tour, does it take you a while to decompress and start working on music again, or do you pick up where you left off?
It definitely takes a while to decompress, and it's hard. I mean, it's like it's the most severe form of jet lag, really, because for weeks or months you've kind of had everything done for you, so you sort of forget how to iron a shirt or fry an egg. And nobody calls you because they just assume you're out of the picture, so it can be a bit of a shock. I suppose the counter to that is that most of us live with our faces buried in our laptop or our iPhone these days, and you can still do that on the road. So that makes a difference, is that I'm still, in the virtual world, I'm still as connected as I ever was. I'm not isolated the way I used to be.
In your time capsule, you're asking people to explain to an alien visitor what went wrong with our civilization. What would your 30-second theory be?
Oh, I'm sort of keeping out of it myself. I'm just editorializing everybody else. But no, I mean it's quite a challenge, actually. I mean, sometimes when people glaze over, if I ask them that, I say, well, look, the world's going to end in 30 seconds. An asteroid's going to hit. What are you saying to whom?
Do you foresee when the digital age is long past, will there be a digital punk movement, and what do you think that would look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the digital age is going to pass, really. I think there's a sort of a counterculture for anything that's strong and mainstream. There's a sort of bastardization of it that happens.
Yeah. Will the Birmingham show feature roughly the same personnel as the album, or is it a different approach?
I can't bring all the guests that I had on my album. I asked Mark Knopfler, but he's busy with Bob Dylan, and Imogen Heap and Regina Spektor have got perfectly respectable careers of their own. So Kevin Armstrong is going to be on tour with me, which is great. I've got a multi-instrumentalist called Erin Jonah Lewis, who covers some of the fiddle and banjo and guitar that's on the album, and great drummer Matt Hector, and I can do a fair amount myself. So we do modified versions of the songs on the album, and very often I'll tell stories behind them, and sometimes I use a sampler, with pads on a trigger finger with which I can throw in Middle Eastern string quartet or a mariachi horn section, who obviously I wasn't able to bring.
Right.
And via places like the WorkPlay, you can have a very intimate show in a club like that, and I look forward to to getting back there.
Well, great. We look forward to seeing you, and I really admire your music, and I appreciate your time.
All right, great talking to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Have a good trip.